Hello Embody and welcome to Pilates class. So this will be the supportive version of this class plan. Still a great full body workout, but great if you're looking for a little bit more support, a little bit more offers of modifications, variations, and overall just less strain and intensity on our body. Knowing that if you're craving that spice, that extra burn, go ahead and take the spicy version of this class. So we're gonna start laying flat on our back. Oh, quick reminder, you need Pilates ball for class. If you have one, not a big deal. If you don't, it's more optional in this version of class. And then if you're wanting a little resistance, either a loop band or your 2 8 bands, again, completely optional, not needed for this version of class. So when you are ready, maybe pressing play on your music, I'm including a playlist that you can choose to follow along with. You can play your own music. You can move in silence, totally up to you. So no rush at all, but please make your way down to your back, knowing you always have the option to start with your legs stretched long or your knees bent, your choice. Taking a quick little body scan. So allowing some length and ease to come into the spine, grounding through the hips, opening through those collarbones. And when you feel ready, moving into our Pilates breathing, ideally holding on to the lower portion of that rib cage, looping those thumbs to the back of the rib cage. As you inhale, breathe in, expand that rib cage like an accordion, breathe in, expand into the whole torso. And as you exhale like a deflating balloon, draw that rib cage in and down like lacing up a corset. Inhale, breathing into the front, back, and sides of the torso like an inflating balloon. And starting to deflate, tighten, and stabilize through our center. Trying to keep a small little natural curve in our low back if possible. And trying to stay quiet through the pelvis. So keeping a tipping or tucking out of this motion. You should feel the motion in your rib cage as well as in your belly. I'm really trying to expand my rib cage out to the sides of my room like a stretching accordion, and then really feeling the sides of the ribs come in and down into that center. Let's do 2 more together. One more. Really at the end of that exhale, feeling the back of that rib cage sink and anchor heavy into your mat. When you're ready, maybe widening those feet to the edges of your mat, taking your arms out to a T, and just gently letting the knees fall right and left. Windshield wipering those knees side to side. We're not trying to muscle or force this motion. Just inviting some movement, beginning to mobilize and wake up through the hips and core. Maybe adding a gentle rotation turn of the head side to side, only if you feel comfortable. And ideally turning the head in the opposite direction of the knees, if that's available to you. Palms can be facing up or down. And again, channel this sense of ease, softness, and kindness to your body, not forcing, not muscling this. A few more side to side, just preparing the body for a great Pilates class. Let's do 1 more each direction. And you're gonna meet me at center. Let's walk the feet back in hip width apart, knees will be bent, pelvis is in that neutral, maybe finding a small little space in our low back. But our rib cage is nice and heavy. Inhale, beginning to float your arms up to your ceiling and back overhead, feeling this stretch and reach upwards of those shoulder blades. And exhale, lowering the arms down by the sides, feeling the shoulder blades slide down the back. So shoulder blades arc upwards as our arms reach up and back overhead. We reverse the motion, reaching our arms up to our ceiling and down by our sides. Up to you if the palms are facing one another or facing away. Both are great choices. Focus on finding a nice, smooth, pain-free range of motion through the shoulders. trying to keep the top of the shoulder itself soft and easy, and feeling the motion more in the shoulder blades, in that upper, kind of mid to upper back area, feeling them arc upward and arc downward. Maintaining a wideness to the collarbones and openness and ease to the throat. Soft through the neck, face, and jaw. From here, let's move into circles, bringing the arms up, circling them out to the sides of your room and down by the hips, continuing 3 more in this direction. Bracing through our core, especially on our exhale, anchoring through the feet, keeping the pelvis quiet. 1 more this direction. And reverse your circles, reaching out to the sides, back overhead, and up and forward. Only finding a range that is pain-free. So knowing your circles can be as large or as small as you want, focusing on finding a smooth range of motion through the shoulders. Last one here. Lowering the arms down by the sides, making sure we slide those shoulder blades down the back and press the arms into the mat. Tighten and brace through your core, moving into marching, lifting 1 leg up and down at a time into your tabletop. Try to keep your pelvis quiet and use that bracing through your center to float that knee up and lower that leg down. I'm gently anchoring through my non-moving foot, gently anchoring through my arms, keeping my rib cage heavy here, keeping my collarbones open. Starting to get a little bit deeper into that core and starting to warm up that hip flexion. Now, if you choose to, on your next lift of your right leg, holding that leg up, making sure you feel stable in your center before maybe floating other leg up to meet it. You can stay here with the arms anchored by the sides or floating your arms to point your fingers directly to your ceiling. We're breathing and holding here. 2 big breaths. Keeping the front of the rib cage heavy. That's where that lateral side to side breathing comes into play. 1 more breath, working through our core. Lower the arms, lower 1 foot at a time. Take a little rock of the knees side to side. We're gonna move into some external rotation through the hips. Anchoring the arms by the sides, lifting 1 leg at a time into tabletop. The feet will stay kissed together, insides of the feet stay together, knees stay over the hips, but we're gonna start to open the knees out to the sides, forming this kind of butterfly position, and then bringing the knees back together. Opening out. This is where, if you would like to take your loop band around your thighs or the 3-star sections of your 2/8 bands, if you're craving resistance here for these butterfly opens and closes, knowing that that's an option, but you're gonna get plenty of work into those deep rotators into your core without adding resistance. So you have choices here, either grabbing the loop band or 2/8 band and placing it around the thighs. In terms of the loop band, it's gonna go both feet inside the loop band. If you're using the 2/8 band, 1 leg in each of the 3-star sections. And we're just continuing to open and close the knees, focusing on moving from the hip socket. So finding those deep rotators. So even though we see the motion in the knees, I want you to really initiate the motion from the hips. Making sure we keep the rib cage heavy, the pelvis stable. You can either keep a little space in that low back, or you can choose to imprint that spine if you're feeling stress or strain. You can also choose to make this more supportive by bringing the knees closer in towards the belly, in towards the chest. More challenging to have the knees stacked over those hip bones. You always have options in your Pilates practice. You're joining me for 2 more opens and closes of the knees. Big breaths. Very good. Hugging the knees into the chest, little rock side to side. 1 more round of this, and then we'll change the rotation to internal. So 1 more round of external rotation. Opening out and closing in, with or without resistance, focusing on your form. Are you anchored? Are you deflated and tight through your whole powerhouse, through your center? opening the knees from the rotation, from the corkscrew or spiral of the hips. Are your collarbones nice and wide, arms anchored into the mat, finding your breath soft through the neck, face, and jaw. Knowing you can always choose to take a break and join me when you're ready. You can also choose to modify, pulling those knees closer into the pelvis. Choose the flow, choose the version that feels best to your body, always listening to and honoring what our body needs on this particular day. Every single day in our body is a little different. Last 2 here. Working that external rotation, 1 more. Hug the knees into the chest, keep your right leg hugged in, stretch your left leg long, and then just take a nice recovery breath in through the nose, out through the mouth. Relaxing through the core, resetting, carefully switching sides. Left leg hugs in, right leg stretches long, trying to keep it right in line with that hip bone, deep breath in and out. Let's reset through center. Anchoring our pelvis, anchoring our rib cage, always lifting 1 leg at a time into tabletop. Now we're gonna go opposite. So we're trying to keep the knees together and spiral the feet apart, moving into internal rotation. So my feet are separating, my knees are staying together. On this one, my knees tend to want to drift away from my body. So I'm really trying to keep my knees right over those hip bones. You can also choose to hold on to the backs of the legs here. That's gonna add a little bit more support. Or you can keep those arms for more challenged, anchor by your side, up pointing towards your ceiling. Find the option that feels best to you. We wanna focus on finding that internal spiral through the hip socket. Internal rotation, not often trained in Pilates or traditional fitness, but so important, not only for our hip health, but for the function of our pelvic floor and just for the functionality, the health of our overall body. So we wanna always balance out that hip work, training internal and external rotation. Let's take 2 more of this round. 2. 1 more. Hugging the knees into the chest. I'm gonna hold on to the backs of my thighs and just gently kind of kick towards my glutes. Just resetting, flopping through my feet. Our final round of internal rotation. So join me in your tabletop or modified. Always knowing you can hold on to the backs of those legs. Knees together, feet spiral away. So knock-kneed position, feet spiraling apart. Really using those deep abdominals to stay stable. Exhaling apart, inhaling together. Feeling that internal spiral. So we really feel like the fronts of the thighs are rotating inward towards one another. Last few here, focus on your quality of movement. Trying to get nice smooth range of motion. Again, not forcing the body, guiding the body into the movement. Last 2 internal. 1 more. And release, hugging your knees into your chest. Let's carefully stretch both legs long this time, creating a sense of length and openness to the front of the hip and thigh. Maybe taking our arms back overhead or wherever feels best to your body, and maybe wiggling out those fingers and toes. We're gonna move into some spine flexion and extension and work a little bit more through those abs. So carefully rolling to one side, pressing yourself up, and this is where if you have your Pilates ball, you're going to use it. We're gonna place it in the upper back, knowing that mid to upper back is absolutely valid. It's kind of a Goldilocks situation in terms of the length of your spine and torso. And then critical that we create this nice cradle of support for the head. So I'm closing my elbows slightly in and I'm creating either an interlaced basket or taking my fingertips on either side of my skull, but never feeling like I'm trying to hold my head up. My head is heavy in my hands and I'm holding my head in my hands. Gentle extension back. So you're gently tipping and leaning back over the ball. You're exhaling, lifting your chest up, not forward. Chest lifts, Rib cage pulls down. Inhaling back and exhaling up. Inhale, feeling length to the spine, gentle extension, and then really scooping and deflating those abdominals. I'm trying to lift my sternum, my chest, to where my wall meets my ceiling as a good reference point. So again, I'm not pulling my head forward. I'm really bringing myself up from those abdominals. Let's do a few more here. Big inhale back, full exhale up. Knowing you can always adjust yourself with that ball. It's going to be a little bit more supportive. It's more in the upper back will be a little bit more supportive than the mid back, but you're a little bit limited in your range. Now curl up and hold. Carefully taking your left hand off from behind your head, and you're going to reach it over to the outer right thigh. So you're reaching diagonally across your body. And then returning through center, placing that hand behind your head. Same way again. So you're twisting slightly to the right and coming through center, anchoring your feet. You can always widen the feet. That's going to give you a more stable base of support. So now I'm supporting my head with my right hand and I'm reaching across with my left. Really feel the movement in the waist and the rib cage as you reach across, inhaling through center, exhaling to twist. We've got 4, working through those obliques, quality of movement, keeping that chest lifted. 3, last 2 here, 2, 1 more, reaching across. Let's find center. Let's inhale back. Exhale, curl straight up first, going the other way. So now my left hand is staying behind my head. I'm going to reach across to the left with my right hand and coming through center. Twist, spiral, reach, and center. Head is heavy in the hands, chest stays lifted here. Deflating and spiraling through that waist, working deep into our core, into our powerhouse for 4. Twisting and reaching, 3. Last 2 here, 2. 1 more. Very good. You can lengthen and release back over the ball. Maybe you carefully roll to one side and take that ball out. Just take a moment, relax, reset. I've taken my ball out. I'm going to take my hands to a goal post position. So my elbows are approximately in line with my shoulders. My hands are reaching back at about a 90-degree angle at my elbow joint. My palms are facing up to my ceiling. It's totally okay if the backs of your hands do not connect to the ground. That's something that you can improve that range of motion, that flexibility over time. Pick those hands up and place the palms down. So now you're in an upside down goal post. And you're just gonna start to move from goal post to upside down goal post, finding the range of motion that again, you feel some mobility, some stretch, but not pain. So you don't need to fully connect the hands to the ground. Listen to your body, stay soft in the neck, face, and jaw. Good, let's go for 2 more. 1 more. Very nice. We're gonna move into some inner thigh work. You have the option to place the ball underneath the pelvis, knowing that this is also a great sequence to do. We're gonna be lifting and lowering the leg turned out from the inner thigh. So noticing that this is a great choice, keeping the pelvis and spine anchored into the mat. If you're craving a little more deep core, I'm walking my feet close into my pelvis. I'm lifting my heels, I'm lifting my hips up, and I'm placing the ball right at the base of my spine. So not too high up into the low back, not too far out to those glutes, right at that sacrum. So if you are having the ball, you can either choose to take a double butterfly position and you'll lift and lower. If that is too intensive a stretch on the groin, inner thighs, and hips, you're gonna keep the leg that's on the ground parallel and just turn out from the moving leg. So let's anchor, knowing you can take a double butterfly. So I'm spinning my knees open. I'm on the outer edges of my heels, and then I'm gonna lift and lower my right thigh. Left thigh can be turned out or parallel. You can also ditch that ball. If you are up on the ball or down on the mat, corset those abdominals. When you're ready, we're lifting that leg up from the inner thigh, keeping a nice about 90-degree angle bend. So I'm working into the internal portion of my hip, lifting from the inside of my thigh and lowering down. If being on the ball feels too intense, please get rid of the ball and take this sequence without the ball. It is a great sequence without the ball. Lifting and lowering from the inner thigh. If external rotation is not in your practice, knowing you can take this parallel, taking that tabletop march and lower. You always have options. Always make these classes with Embody work best for you. It is your time to take care of your body. It is your practice. You never have to feel pressured to do something you're not comfortable with. Let's corset through the ribs and abs, floating up from that inner thigh. Lifting and lowering. Few more here, really feeling that activation through the inside of the leg, soft through the shoulders, neck, face, and jaw. 2 more this side, dragging and floating that leg up. You also don't need to fully lift it to hip height. Good, let's reset through center. Just returning to parallel. I'm just kind of opening and closing my knees for a second, and then let's go other leg. So now I'm lifting through my left leg. Just make sure it's your opposite leg. Find your powerhouse, and then you're lifting from that inner thigh and trying to keep that external rotation through that moving leg, knowing that the opposite leg can absolutely come to parallel. That's going to be a little bit more of a stable position for the hip. I'm slightly engaged through the glute of my non-moving leg to help me stabilize. Lots of engagement through my deep core and inner thigh. Try not to kick the leg up. Try to float the leg up and down. And you may not have as much external rotation as me. You may have more external rotation than me. It doesn't matter the degree of the rotation. It matters where you're lifting from. So just making sure we are lifting from the inside of that thigh, unless you're choosing the variation where you just take that parallel tabletop march. Few more here. Let's take our last 2 this side. 2. 1 more. Very good. If you are on the ball, please walk your feet close into the ball, lift the heels, lift the hips, roll the ball out of your way, and let's all just hug our knees into our chest. Take a little rock side to side. Let's keep the right knee hugged in, stretch the left leg long, big breath. Carefully switching legs. Big breath in and out. Maybe rolling to one side to press yourself up to seated. You will need your ball if you're choosing to use it. We're moving into our half roll back. So ball is optional. Great way to support the low back and pelvis. You can also choose to hold onto the sides or backs of the legs for added support. Watch where the initiation is coming from. So we never want to lean back. We want to feel this gentle scoop in what we call Pilates a C curve. So you're starting right on top of those sitting bones. So it helps to kind of move the flesh of the glutes out of the way, and then you're going to scoop, maybe rolling back into the ball, maybe rolling back without the ball, always up to you. Sip of air in here, and then using that scoop, scoop, scoop of the abs to roll yourself up, up, up. Scooping back, making sure the abs are driving the roll back, sip of air in, and then the abs bring your body up, maybe lifting those arms to find a little more length through that spine. Find your flow. Make sure the low abs initiate the roll back, knowing you can always choose to hold onto the backs of the legs. And then almost like there's a playground tunnel in front of you, you're trying to roll through the tunnel and lengthen out the top. You do not need to go as far back as me. Please listen to your body. If those hip flexors are getting really, really grippy on you, maybe choose to take legs length and long. Play around and find what feels best to your body, knowing that we're trying to get that beautiful engagement through the abs and a nice articulation movement through our spine. Let's do 2 more together. Guided by our breath, exhales to move, inhales to prepare, exhaling back. Sip of air in. One last roll up, up, up. Very good. We're gonna make our way for a brief sequence on all 4s. Knowing that if being on your hands and knees is not in your practice, you can come down to those forearms. It also sometimes is a good choice if you have yoga blocks or something to take the ground and elevate the ground up a little bit. That tends to unload the joints. Good form is gonna be your best friend here. So let's just curl the toes under if that's in your practice, no worries. If it's not, you can keep the tops of the feet long. Fingers are spread wide, approximately underneath those shoulders. And I just want you to take this gentle rock forward and back. Biggest thing we can do to help prepare ourselves or set ourselves up for success is just preparing those joints to bear weight. So I'm just kind of waking up my wrists, my knees, my feet. We want to make sure we're never collapsed in that shoulder girdle. So you want to stay lifted through that chest, never dropped in those shoulders. Really, really critical here that the shoulder blades stay nice and wide. Now let's meet at center, knowing maybe extra padding for the knees is needed here. Maybe coming down to the forearms is a better choice. You have the option to make fists. You have the option to place your hand on yoga blocks. You have to find what feels best to your body. An ever slow, slight tuck of that tailbone to really find that stability through our center, through those deep abs. We're gonna pick the knees up 1 inch and lower the knees down 1 inch. I am keeping my shoulder blades wide, but my shoulders are not earrings here, which is a real struggle for me. Shoulders are down the back, tight through those armpits. It helps me to think about dragging my hands towards my feet, my knees towards my hands. Sorry, my hands towards my knees towards my hands. There we go. So even though those points are not literally moving, that's gonna concentrate the load into your core versus loading up your hips and shoulders. We're still definitely working through the hips and shoulders. Other thing here, our head is heavy. So make sure you pick that head up. You feel long through the back of the neck. I feel like you're flying through the air here as we lift and lower. You also don't need to pick up those knees. You can just work on activating through that core and inhaling to reset. Zipping up and pushing the mat away. The knee hover is always optional. Big breaths in and out. Always knowing you have the option to come down to those forearms. Your last few here, long through the front and back of the neck, stable through our center, keeping our spine long and flat. So even though we're slurping those abs, we're not doming our spine like our cat pose. Keep that spine nice and long. Last 2 here. Let's finish with a hold if that's in your practice. Lift and hold or reset, holding for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Untuck the toes, widen those knees, sink back into a child's pose. You can always add some support for the knees, like sitting on the ball a little bit if deep flexion through the knees is not feeling great. Big breath in and out. Relax, reset, let everything go for a moment. So in these restorative positions, letting everything relax, reset so we can re-engage in the actual movement. We're moving into sideline next. So you may choose to add some additional padding for that outer hip. You always have the option to come up onto the forearm like so. I will be demonstrating today on my side, and I will be taking my ball like a little pillow. That's what feels best to me. You can use a literal pillow. You can use your arm as a pillow. You're gonna have to find what feels best to your body, knowing you always have options. We wanna have our knees pretty generously bent and pointing to the front edge of our mat so our thighs are in front of us. We're gently flexed through our hips. Both hip bones are facing front. You're gonna take your top leg and extend it to the front corner of your mat. There's a slight bend in that knee, just a teeny tiny bend. Active through that bottom waist, active through our powerhouse. You're gonna lift that leg and gently arc and tap it to the back, making this kind of rainbow arc forward and back. So we're active through that side body, slurping it away from the mat underneath us. I'm placing my opposite hand, my top arm, in front of my kind of torso, chest area for additional support. The challenge here is, one, not to crunch and lift too high through that hip, but also not to move those hip bones. So my hip bones, like headlights of a car, are staying facing front as I flex, coming to the front, hip flexion, and extending to the back, placing that thigh slightly behind my pelvis, opening up those hip flexors, working through those outer hip muscles. If getting all the way to the back edge of your mat is not in your practice, or you're feeling this in the low back, shorten that range of motion. Find the size of the rainbow that feels best to your body today, knowing that's something that we can increase over time with our Pilates practice. Big breaths, lengthen that thigh, reach and arc to the back. You should be feeling that burn. I definitely know I am. One more rainbow to the back, one more to the front. Very good. Carefully press yourself up. We're gonna take a little bit of a modified side plank. So I'm sitting in this kind of mermaid sit or Z sit. So I've got both knees pointed to the front. One thigh is slightly extended. You can take it as far back as feels comfortable. And then I just want you to roll that shoulder back and start to push through that hand. So pushing and rolling, lifting through that side body. Little bend and extend. Bend and extend. So as we work through the arm, keep the shoulder rolled back, keep the rib cage, hips, and shoulders facing front. Fingers are spread wide, and noticing I've got my hand angled away, so I'm able to take this little kind of shoulder flexion, almost like a sideways push-up. Adjust this position so it feels best to your body. You can bring your knees more to the front, more to the side. You can take a full Z-sit, and you can take a range of motion that feels best to your body. Let's keep the hand pretty much alongside the body. Watch this. Make sure the shoulder is never rolled forward. It's rolled back, so we're working and supporting through the front and back of the shoulder. You don't need to bend as much as me. Working through that side body as well too for 4, 3, last 2 here, 2, and 1. Let's flip around and go directly to the other side. So moving back into our glute rainbows. Laying on your side, knowing you can always choose to be up on that forearm. Setting yourself up, hip bones stacked, one on top of the other, knees to the front edge of your mat, top leg extended long. Active and slurpy through that bottom waist, and then we're gonna lift and tap towards the back and lift and tap towards the front. I felt right away my pelvis wanting to roll, so I'm gonna anchor that hand and take a little bit smaller range of motion so I get that form, get that stability. Active through the back of the hip to gently press that thigh back in space, and then using the core, using the outer hip and hip flexors to arc and rainbow to the front. Just a slight knee bend here, so not thinking 90, thinking more of a, I don't know what angle that is, just a slight knee bend. Really feeling that core sitting feeling through our center, soft through the neck, face and jaw, long and reaching through that leg. So even though it's bent, don't get crunchy in that hip. Keep reaching out with that thigh as you arc to the back and arc to the front. Few more here. Quality of movement, using your breath. Good, our final set. Let's take one more to the back, one more to the front. Very good, carefully pressing yourself up and going for our kind of side push-ups. So again, find a positioning, not so important what's happening in the lower half of the body. It is important that both hips are facing front and that that hand is angled away from you. You're gonna take a nice soft bend, press. If you want more of a challenge, you can take it further away, but making sure, again, we feel the muscles never straining on those joints. The slower you go, the more stability we'll find through this modified side plank. So I'm trying to push the mat away, roll the shoulder back, and hug my shoulder blade towards my spine. Neck is long and relaxed, jaw is relaxed, pelvic floor and core is engaged. You can use that other hand for a little additional support, and you can take tiny little bends of that elbow. It does not need to be a full range. Roll that shoulder back, activate through that mid back. Last 4 here. 3. Last 2. Last 1. Very good. We're going to make our way onto our stomach, moving into our mini swan. So if being on your stomach is not in your practice, knowing that you can choose to, for this sequence, take your cat and cows. This is our cow. This is our cat. Great option if you prefer to avoid prone work. But if you are able to get down onto your stomach, really, really important muscles will be strengthening here, our back extensors. So I've got my legs about mat distance apart. I've got my hands by my shoulders, and I'm allowing my forehead to press and relax down into the mat. We're gonna roll the shoulders back, hug the shoulder blades, arcing them downward, slurping our abs, gently engaging our glutes. Thinking long, long neck. We're going to start to press gently into our hands and hover our head, neck, and shoulders up. I'm keeping my eyes down. I'm keeping my throat open. And then I'm going to lower back down to that starting position, maintaining that length. So thinking about how a baby pushes themselves up, they really lengthen and reach their head, sending tons of energy through the crown of the head and lowering down. Or I always like to think about the image, kind of an older reference, but the movie E.T., where he really stretches his neck long. I'm rolling my shoulders back, critical. My shoulder blades are drawing down and towards my spine. Try to keep those elbows at the height of your mini swan, hug tight by your sides. Abs are slurping up off the mat. It is not about how high you come up. It's about creating this feeling of length, like you're flying through the air. 2 more here. 1 more. Let's carefully push ourselves mindfully up and back into a quick child's pose, just finding a stretch, maybe puppy pose, maybe a kind of in between if you prefer. And meeting me back down onto your stomach, or revisiting your second round of cat-cows if you're choosing to stay on all 4s. If you are down on your stomach, you're gonna stack one hand on top of the other and rest the forehead on the hands. Legs are hip width or mat width apart. Slurp the abs gently, engaging through the glutes. Pick your hands up, keeping your forehead connected to your hands, so you're hovering head, heart, and hands off the mat, rolling those shoulders back, hugging the shoulder blades together and down the back, and then lowering with control, slight lift. So we're allowing the hands to support the weight of the head, but we are never crunching on the back of that neck. So keep your gaze down, and again, think about flying through the air, creating length, and then really controlling that lower back down. If you're feeling really strong here and you feel secure in that core, you're keeping your hip bones and pubic bone pressed into the mat, maybe you hover the legs as well. Not super high, thinking super, super long legs, super, super long spine. Breathe with me. Inhale to prepare, and exhale, hover and lift. Inhaling down, and exhaling up. Inhale, feel that length and control as you lower. Last few here together. Shoulder blades drawn together and down the back, neck supported by the hands. Let's go for 2 more, final 2. Length over height. Your last one with me. Carefully lowering down, very good. Let's take our hands pretty much next to our armpits, engaging through our core to push ourselves up and back, maybe taking a child's pose or a puppy pose. I'm bringing my feet together, my knees wide. I'm pulling my hips back. I'm drawing my chest down towards my mat, guiding my forehead down to my mat and letting everything relax, melt, sink, and ground. 2 breaths here. Lengthening and stretching through the spine, relaxing through your core, relaxing through your shoulders. 1 more breath. From here, let's walk the hands over to the right, maybe stacking one hand on top of the other. So I've got my left hand stacked over my right. That's optional. I'm pulling back slightly through that left hip, creating this kind of diagonal reach and stretch, angling my body over towards my right thigh. Find the degree of the angle that feels best to you. 1 more big breath here. And let's switch sides. Walking my hands over to the left side of my mat, stacking right hand over left as an option, pulling and reaching through that right hip, reaching long through that right arm, and breathe. Let's make our way into a nice butterfly stretch to relax and release through those hips, knowing you always have the option to sit up onto yoga blocks if you're feeling any crunchiness, any discomfort through the low back or hips. Feet any distance from your body, big breath in. And just take a little flow with me, bowing like you're peeking over a cliff edge and restacking up. Exhale, reaching and bowing. Doesn't need to be very big. Focus on the release through the hips, through the spine. Let's find 1 more bow forward. Hands wherever you'd like. Big breath in and out. Slowly restacking up, cross-legged Pilates V stance with those legs, anything that feels best to you. Again, option to sit on those yoga blocks. Let's take a nice stretch over to the side, thinking lifting up and over, rainbow arcing over, breathing into that side body, adding a little element of flow. So let's just start to flow right and left together, stretching and lengthening. Continue to fight for that lift up out of the low back, but a sense of groundedness through those hips. Tall, tall, tall through center. Trying to keep this really 2-dimensional. So like you're in between 2 panes of glass. Let's do 1 more each direction. And finishing off with a gentle twist. Lifting tall through center, rotating to the right, maybe taking left hand to outer right thigh. And I'm just reaching that back arm, really hugging that shoulder blade towards my spine. Maybe turning your gaze towards the back of the room, maybe looking directly to the side, lifting up out of the hips. Other side. So rotating, derotating, twisting, spiraling, lengthening as we twist, never crunching on that spine. Let's take 1 more each direction. Lift through the heart center, gentle rotation. Breathing in and out, final time. Lifting up out of the hips and low back, reaching and spiraling. Very good. Finishing out with a big, beautiful breath up and in through center. Lots of length and floatiness. Push the palms away, driving that air away. Scoop that air up, up, up. Fight for that length. Push that air away. 1 more with me. This time, let's connect the hands. Bending at the elbows, drawing through heart center. Pausing for a moment of stillness together. Taking a moment to give yourself a thank you for taking time out of your day to care for your body, mind, and spirit. Thank you so much for joining me for this class. Beautiful, beautiful job, and have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you next time.